hear that thing bounce off the bottom, you got about 1.170.
Just blast all 4 bolts out. You can take a vacuum tester and test each valve. The lip seal off the side of it and destroys the piston.
Hi guys, it's David. We're back at the bench. We're gonna wait a minute. The heater's going off up there and it's pretty loud, so uno momento, por favor. All right, now that you guys know all of my Spanish that I know, we are going to talk about a 10R80. We're back at the bench today. Well, kinda. This is not our typical setting. As you guys can see, this is not our normal bench. These are new teardown benches, and the problem that we've got is we've got a whole bunch of transmissions tore down over there that we don't have parts for. So we're gonna come over here and we're gonna tear down this one over here. This is a 10R80 automatic transmission out of a 2019 Ford Mustang GT with a 5.0 engine. The car came to us with a 1.22334 shift complaint. Car has 7,300 miles on it, and it also has an Edelbrock supercharger on top of it. We know from our experience that these converters have a lot of problems. We're going to disassemble the transmission and talk about the problems that we typically see inside of them, as well as what we're going to do to prevent them from happening again in the future. So we're gonna start by getting the converter out and see what kind of fluid we got. Well, that's not good at all. It's wow. She's a little on the extra floppy side, so that's not good. We should probably do something about that. Get this thing over here to our drain rack. Let her drain out for a little while. While that guy is draining though, we are going to take this thing apart. We're going to start with getting our pump bolts out, and then we're gonna roll it on its side and take the bottom out. For you guys that think that I only enjoy air tools, I do have electric tools, I just, I don't like them as much. Man, this thing stinks. Smells like it's been on fire. It definitely does not smell good inside of here. We're going to get all of our bolts out. You guys can see that there's all this pink stuff on these bolts. And this has been a discussion in the past. 10R80s do not use a washer on their pump bolts. Instead, they use silicone. This is not your typical black RTV. This is actually a Ford specific silicone. So if you're going to take one apart, buy the right silicone. All right, let's get this dude on our back. Woo! That sucker is way up there.
She's stinking now.
Yeah, it's stinky. These little heat shield diapers don't look all that important, but they really are. I see a lot of guys take these things off and think that they're doing themselves a service. They, in fact, are not. This heat shield is there to help prevent the side of the pan from becoming distorted with the factory exhaust. If you're putting headers on, these things are still required. Make sure you use them. There's a reason that Ford put them on there in the beginning. Make sure you use these guys. Spin this guy around a little bit. I'm gonna roll it over here where I can. Not my normal bench. A little awkward to use. Well, that's not good. When in doubt, get the bigger impact out.
Alrighty. Now we're getting somewhere. Cooking with peanut butter oil today. If you guys are wondering what I keep reaching in the drawer here for, those little guys. These are Cornwell sockets. I was given some Cornwell sockets by my local Cornwell guy to aid in the teardown of these transmissions. So I'd like to let you guys see what those things are. They're a little bit of a thinner wall chrome socket than your Snap-ons or Matcos. So if you're working on transmissions, they work out really well. Going to pull all the 13mm bolts out. These are studded bolts, and those are in those specific locations for the heat shields. So whenever you put this thing back together, make sure you line those up. We got a leaker now. Look at all that, Caleb. Can you see the silver coming out in that fluid? Ooh, that is not good, boys.
Yeah, you can see it when you put your light right here.
Yeah. Alrighty, let's get this giant. Woo! Oh man, it peed on me. That's not very nice. Guys, we'll be right back. We are going to take a few minutes here to clean up our mess and get this a little bit more workable. Oh no! I got oil down the hole. I'm really unhappy about that. Okay, Annie. Next, we're going to take off the filter, which has just a couple of bolts holding it on. Ooh. That filter is gross. That is all clutch material, boys and girls. Look at all that stuff. You can see the silver right here. This is actually where the magnet is on the inside of the filter. Now, we're gonna stick that over here in our let it drain rack. This valve body is different than a lot of the other valve bodies that we deal with. This valve body has a bulkhead connector here. You guys seen me release that. What I did to release it, push it back in, is pull the red clip rearward. It's typically in this location. We're going to move the red clip rearward, and we're going to push down on the center there. Get a screwdriver out here. We'll push down right here, and that'll release this lock. Then it can be removed. Now that we've got that out, this part of the harness actually stays attached to the valve body on a 10R80. So we've got to take out some bolts. We've got bolts that have arrows on them, which not all of them have the arrows on them, but most of them. What those arrows tell you is those bolts are what's holding the valve body down. So we're gonna get all these 8s out. Oh, missed one there. Good eyeball, Caleb.
I got you.
Caleb is behind our camera again today. If you guys are wondering who's back there and what he's talking about,
It's always me.
it's always Caleb. Now, we've got that out of the way, we've got that out of the way. All of our 8s are out. We're going to put those in our needs to be washed area. We're going to pull all our valve body off. So, ooh, I see a problem. We definitely have a problem, guys. You can see that harness has been melted. This is actually the input speed sensor for this transmission. And we can see a lot of harness meltage there too. This has actually been melted. All of this black stuff that you guys are seeing through here, all of the stuff that looks like charcoal flakes, that's actually clutch material. So we definitely have a problem inside of this unit. We're gonna set this out of our way, and we're going to continue taking this thing apart. We're gonna remove our pump next. Woo. Always take out all your 8s. This pump is not like a standard Ford pump. This actually uses a gear to drive the pump. This gear is driven off of the inside of the body on the front. Do not take a pry bar to this. To remove the pump, once you've got the bolts out, we can either tap right here, or we can put a pump puller on the front and we can actually pull the pump out. But I have seen guys do this and it breaks this gear. If you put a screwdriver or a pry bar in there thinking you're gonna pry the pump out, you'll actually damage that pump gear. Fun fact for you. Right now, currently on the market, the only way to buy this pump gear is with this free pump on the front. Yeah, you heard that right. The whole pump assembly has to be bought, not just this one gear. Keep that in mind if you're taking one apart. What we're gonna do is we're actually going to put a screwdriver in here, and we're just gonna kind of rock it just a hair. You guys can see just a little bit of rocking goes a long ways, because that thing will just pop right out. You should not have to pry or hammer to get that pump cover out. Since we've got that broke free, we're going to remove our two speed sensors. Speed sensor here, speed sensor here. Going to put our bolts off to the side. We're actually going to pull these completely out of the bore, and we're just going to let the harness dangle. Here in just a little bit, we're going to take out the rest of this harness and actually remove it from the transmission for washing. This speed sensor is next, and then this speed sensor is last. We're just going to let those guys hang out all loosey-goosey. Push our transmission all the way to the back here to give us some room to play. We're going to pull out our stator. Now, this is where this whole process gets a little interesting. So this clutch, B clutch is what this is, has a snap ring retaining it. And in the retainer is actually this stopping point right here. So the snap ring can only be positioned in this location. To remove this snap ring, you actually have to press this outside or this inside piece down to allow this snap ring to be removed. So we're going to set this thing up and see if we can't press that down a little bit. So you guys can see we are putting our pump into a press, and we're actually going to press the steel downward like so until it stops. Not going to press it really hard, not going to work on it too much. And we're going to reach in with a screwdriver and we're going to release the snap ring by pushing in and then lifting up. And then it will release. Now we can take our press back off. Get this over here on the bench. For you guys that are curious of my special pressing tool here, this is a Sunshell from a 4L60, and it works absolutely perfect for pressing that down. You'll notice that this snap ring is stepped right there. There we go. Okay. The reason for that is the way that it actually locks onto this is it goes over this shoulder like so. So, kind of a weird little system, but it works. These clutches all have wave rings inside of them. Just gonna lay that down. You guys can see that that ring is actually wavy. The purpose of that is to keep the steel plates pushed apart while this clutch is not being used. Pull this guy off. And you guys can see how many hot spots are on these steels. These steels are gonna have to be replaced. This is something that I don't get to talk about a whole lot, but it's something that I'm very, very adamant about. Anytime you are building a transmission, if your steels have heat checking in them, replace the steels. I do not promote or do I endorse the idea of buffing steels or sanding steels. I like all of my steels to either be new or to be tumbled and reconditioned. So these need to be replaced. We have a sprag in the back of this race and a bearing. This bearing is very, very easy to damage. If you're installing this thing on here, you need to take a lot of care when placing this bearing and the sprag down onto this race. I'm gonna set all the stuff for the B clutch to the side. You'll notice that there's a piston down inside of here. And this isn't like your typical pistons. There's no spring on this piston. There's no return spring on this piston. Part of that is because the return spring is built in with those. Having the wave springs actually allows you to not have to have a return spring on the piston. We also have a spring on the outside here, and this needs to be removed and this piston will come out. So we're gonna go ahead and pop that guy out of there. Just a little bit of screwdriver action. Pushing that part down is where it gets a little interesting, but oh no, this one's got a retainer on it. You can see how it's got these little knots right here. These dimples are actually to keep that snap ring from being able to be removed without pressing that down. So we'll get a special tool out here in a minute. We'll cover that too. But for now, we're gonna set our pump off to the side. We're gonna see if we can't get the rest of these guts out of here. I know, that was cheating. But on a 10R80, that's the only way to do it. I'm gonna set these clutches right here and try to wipe off my bench a little bit here, guys, to where I can discuss a little bit more of what we're doing. All right, guys, we made it back. We got our bench cleaned up a little bit here to where we can actually look at some stuff. We are looking at our A clutch. The A clutch is the first clutch that comes out of the inside of the transmission. And you guys can see here that the steels have the same problem that the steels on the B clutch have. Hot spots. That is not good. So we're gonna lay all this stuff to the side. All this stuff is gonna get replaced. The I keep wanting to call this the F clutch, but this is actually the A clutch. You guys can see here that we have a pressure plate, 2 thin steels, and a pressure plate with a waved backing spring. That cushion spring on the back helps keep the clutch from having too harsh of an engagement on initial engagement. We're going to stand our giant space shuttle straight up and down here, and we're going to remove the snap ring holding the main drum to the spaceship, which there's a snap ring right here. When you remove that snap ring, this drum will fall, like so. And then you can take that drum out of that drum, like so. We have a bearing in the very bottom of the drum. We have several sets of holes and splines and everything else in there, but we're not concerned about that. We're concerned about what goes on in here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take this thing apart, and then we will talk about what's actually inside of it. You guys notice I'm just kind of grabbing her by the end and pulling out. That's the best way to get this one apart. Just grab it by the end and give it a pull out. We're going to remove the snap ring right here. Roll. Get that ring gear out of our way. And then there's another snap ring below that actually holds the drum onto the clutches. These clutches can be a little bit of a turkey to get off of here. So we're going to remove our rear bearing. Get that out of our way. To remove this, what we actually need to do is not drag our snap ring around. We actually need to compress this to get this thing apart. We're going to take our bearing off the front so we don't lose that guy. And then there's a snap ring right down inside of here that holds the shaft in place. Let me grab another pick, make this a little easier for us. So, reach down inside of here. I'll pry that snap ring inward, and then take a second pick, if I can get it in there. Come here. Reach down inside of there. Come on. Sometimes you gotta talk to it a little bit. Ah, so close. Man alive, that snap ring does not want to get out of that hole. Come here. May have to resort to a different type of tool. Okay, let's try the other side. Sometimes one side just doesn't want to come out. There we go. Now we're cooking with butter. Get that little turkey out of there. There are O-rings on the shaft right here to actually seal that drum. Now that we've got our shaft out of our way, we can actually work on this thing. So to press this thing apart, we need to release this snap ring and release this top plate. You guys can see I can push down on that pretty freely, and then we've got a snap ring that comes out right here. But to get the snap ring out, this has to be pushed down. So let me grab a pushing tool. And then we can press that guy down like that. Take some snap ring pliers and pop the snap ring out. Easy pull of the fingers, and that one comes up. Ooh, man, this thing has been hot, hot, hot. Look at all the burn spots on this thing. We are definitely gonna have to buy some steels. Now, get our return spring out, dump this thing out, and get a little bit of the oil out of it. We're gonna move on to our main drum here. Houses our 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6, 7, 8, and all that fun stuff. Going to pull out our Planetary, and then we're actually going to take this drum, drop our other sun gears out, because that's the thing to do, and our bearings. We're going to pull out our next set of clutches. You guys see how much? I don't think that's right. Ruh-roh, Raggy. Those guys have been hot, hot, hot. We're definitely going to have to be buying some parts for this one. Your steel plates should not be in a U shape. This next one is where it can get a little tricky. So this is actually a 3-stage snap ring that holds this set of clutches. Part of this 3-stage snap ring is to keep this pressure plate in the upward position to keep the amount of clearance on the clutches it needs so as not to drag on the clutches. And the other fun part about this is getting this snap ring out. So there's a couple of different approaches here, but mine has always been just stick a pick in there and give her the prying.
Is that why it's called the F clutch? Because it makes you want to say the F word?
It is. That's exactly why this is the F clutch. It makes you want to say, fudge, my fingers hurt. Now that we have our outside snap ring out, we can remove our inside snap ring, which is a big old thick one. And then we can move our very most inboard snap ring, which is this guy, out of our way. Stick a pick in there and pry it out of the position it's supposed to be in. And we just kind of lift it off of the drum. Now we can see, holy turkeys. That guy has been hot, hot, hot. Look at those. Guys, this is a bad Mustang transmission.
The thing's black.
Yeah. Let's get down to our last set of clutches here. We don't have much left in this transmission. Pretty much scattered. I'm going to pull our snap ring out. Lay it to the side and pull our clutch plates out. Holy pickles, this thing has been hot. That clutch should not look like that. So, one thing that I don't know if you guys know a whole lot about here, but we're going to talk about it anyways. You'll notice that the wear pattern on this clutch is a lot deeper on the inside than it is on the outside. And what that tells us is that our steel plates have actually began to cone. So if you lay this steel plate on a flat surface, the inside will be higher than the outside. And the reason for that is that that's not actually a design. That's not something that Ford did. This clutch has been so hot and been slipping so much that it has allowed this steel plate to warp in this form. And whenever they warp like that, it causes the clutch to actually eat the inside lining off instead of the outside lining, because the clutch disc will do the same thing. It will bow to match the steel. You'll get uneven wear, you'll have uneven contact, and ultimately burn the transmission up. So one of the biggest things that we wanted to show you guys about this 10R80 transmission is not the complexity of it, because this is a very complex transmission. It's that anybody can do this. This transmission is no more complex than a turbo 350 or even earlier than that, an old torque flight or something of that nature. Yes, it has more clutches, and yes, it has more moving parts inside of it, but if you take the time and do your research, and I've got it on the computer, I've got an ATSG manual. I'll be using that the entire time while we reassemble this transmission. It's not a bad thing to ask for help. If you guys don't know what you're doing, or if you get stumped on something like this, ask for help. That's the joy of this industry, is a lot of the builders I know and a lot of the shops I know, they enjoy helping other people. And part of that is because this is a dying industry. There's not as many people in this industry today as there once was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, or even 5 years ago. And part of that is because of the mentality that it takes to build this transmission and to build any transmission. So with that being said, guys, I want to remind you, check out some of our other videos that we've got posted right now. We've got our giveaway going on, and we're trying to get everything straightened out with that. While we are doing that, we are going to get all this stuff cleaned up and prepped up and ready to reassemble. So thank you guys as always. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Hit that button. I think Caleb's going to put a button right here in this area, and I want you guys to do this number a whole bunch. So thank you guys. We'll see you on the next one.